I'd like to welcome you all today to the official launch of the SCAN Data Spaces project. My name's Greg Gibson. I'm going to be presenting today, but first, just a few ground rules. We're in webinar format today because we are a large audience. So to ask your questions of us, please use the Q&A box in the toolbar. That pops up for the presenters so we can see your question and we'll answer them as they come in. This is meant to be a lot of us hearing from you, so we're hoping for lots of questions. The next thing I'd like to do is a quick land acknowledgement. McMaster University, as host institution for the Canadian Research Data Center Network, is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. We begin our session today by giving honor and thanks to the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations, and to recognize our responsibility to respect and honor the intimate relationship Indigenous people have to this land. You can visit Native Land Digital, a space where people can learn more about the lands they inhabit, the history of those lands, and how to actively be part of a better future going forward together. And now I'd like to turn it over to the Executive Director of the CRDCN, Dr. Natalie Harrower, and she's going to give us a quick introduction. Go ahead, Natalie.
Super. Thank you so much, Grant. I'll make this quite fast. I just wanted to welcome you all and thank you for coming. We're really, really excited to get this kicked off. So our project, which is the Social Sciences Canada Data Space, or SCAN, is one of 4 projects that are supported by the Alliance, or DRAC, as part of the National Data Spaces pilot. And we're the only one to focus on social sciences data and really to focus on data itself as infrastructure. So we're very pleased to be part of this larger initiative because the pilot approach means that we're building this space for the social sciences, but also throughout with an eye to informing the development of other data spaces in Canada in the future. So it's focused on one area, but if this is something that we can roll out across the country, how can we contribute to that, which is exciting. There's a lot of work to do to make data interoperable and reusable across the social sciences, which are many disciplines under an umbrella. But we also want to think about how we can support work that collaborates beyond these disciplines. So these are the sorts of things that'll be in mind. This mechanism, this opportunity comes at a very good time for CRDCN because one of our strategic priorities is around improving the broader landscape in Canada for the stewardship of data that emerges from social science research and data that feeds into the research of social sciences, of course, with a quantitative persuasion in mind, because that's where our expertise and experience lies. So we're really interested in the entire research data life cycle and playing a role in supporting that. We've been working on this strategic priority in a number of ways. We've been contributing to a CCA panel that's focusing on enhancing Canada's national research infrastructure, of course, from the perspective of social sciences, as well as a panel by the Chief Science Advisor on national approaches to data governance. So how can Canada better treat data as the national asset that it is? And we're doing similar kinds of work with CFI. So CFI is one of the major funders of CRDCN and 18 other major science initiatives. There we're looking at the challenges posed by growing demands for data sharing, compute power, data curation, and research security. Lots of different things coming together. So for this project, we intend to work widely with research and data communities in Canada to understand what is needed. So we're doing these kind of national level approaches, and then we really want to get down into the grassroots of what's required. And also, while looking at that, look to kind of carefully pay attention to international best practice, learn from other groups that are kind of further ahead in this data spaces approach, and use these to create something that is state of the art and ultimately serves the needs of all of you who are attending the webinar today. So we're trying to widen our user base and and find out what we can create that is best for social science research in Canada. So thanks again for coming. I will turn it back to Grant.
Okay, and I have a quick deck before we come back to audience Q&A. So thank you. My name is Grant Gibson. I'm the Assistant Director of Research and Evaluation at the Canadian Research Data Center Network, and I'm here to talk to you today about the SCAN Data Space project. Just to go over what we plan to talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the National Data Spaces project envelope more broadly. I'm going to talk about our submission, our plans for 2026 and a little bit forward. how you can get involved, and then we'll turn over to hear from you and your questions. So to start with, let's just talk a little bit about the Data Spaces pilot. So Natalie mentioned a little bit about it, and there was some other organizations funded. But to start very simple, what is a data space? Well, a data space is something where a community can come together around some kind of data, whether it be research questions, topics, subject matter, providers, and basically they can come together and ask themselves, okay, what do we need to do as a community to make our data work for everyone better than it's working now, right? So you may have data that are siloed. You may have data that are collected in different formats, and the idea of a data space is for the community to come together and set up a coordination around making the data more fair and more accessible for all the members. There might be infrastructure, there might not be infrastructure, but the community would come together and come up with the principles and ideas about data management and sharing in their circle that work for them. And a data space is also got a governance element to it so that the community members are represented in the direction of the data space as it evolves. The Data Spaces pilot is an initiative from the Digital Research Alliance of Canada to provide for communities with funding to explore the creation of the data space. So there's CanAvian is another one that was funded. There's the Ocean Observatory System, and then there's a Genome Canada project that is that are the other Data Spaces pilots that were funded alongside us. And we're all expected to progress from wherever we started to be more mature as a data space over the life of the funding cycle. So there were funding across different sort of maturities, and everyone's just looking to improve their coordination and improve the quality of the data space. So what did we submit as CRDCN? Well, we're looking for a place for sensitive social science data. So the landscape on the university campuses is that most of them have, some kind of on-site storage for sensitive data. Some of them use cloud-based American subscriptions, and the logins are usually sort of limited to that university, or if you can generate a key for someone at another university, it's often a bit of an administrative headache and permissions get revoked. And I think, most of us in the research world have collaborated across these types of services before, and it's not as good as it could be. So because of that, reuse and sharing of data, particularly the sensitive variety that really need those extra controls, they're both not as um, uh, prolific as they should be. It doesn't happen as often as it should, and it doesn't happen in a way that's as secure as it could be. So what we're proposing is to provide a made-at-home solution for researchers to share and use sensitive social science data. And we're not coming at this as, totally naive. CRDCN as an organization was created in the year 2000 to organize member universities for access to Statistics Canada's confidential master files. So that's been our stock and trade for the last 26 years. We started with 4 or 5 universities and like fewer data sets than that. And now the network is over 45 universities. It says 40 there, but it's actually 45, more than 45, and more than 300 data sets. We've got records that we didn't dream of in the early days, taxes, hospital records, the census, the business data, all kinds of things that we never dreamed of having when we first started. And in 2016, we were funded as one of the major science initiatives in Canada by CFI, and we are the only one in the quantitative social sciences. So we told the Alliance we were going to do a lot of things. And the things that we told them we would do were to engage with the research community, engage with the data providers, provide some orientation and training around metadata standards, curation, and working in the sensitive social science space. We're going to have to do some legal analyses about what sort of data sharing frameworks look like across the provinces, across the territories, across the country. We've got to put together a risk framework to help us understand, which data are in, which ones are served by other services across Canada. We have to come up with some kind of a system map, but importantly, this funding envelope does not have any infrastructure dollars tied to it. And so what we're looking to do is design the infrastructure on paper and then look later at what we can build. And we've got to do reporting on progress reporting on this throughout the process as you would with any funding envelope. And the funding envelope is a 2-year envelope. So we've already started. We're already partway through 2026. Our goals for this year are to do some of the initial community engagement, which sort of starts today with you folks. We've got to put together our project team. We've got some hiring to do related to this project. In 2027, next year, we've got to create and publish some training, and we've got to come up with a business plan for the SCAN data space as a going concern so that we can begin to apply for funds to build the infrastructure and implement the suggestions and feedback we get from the community on what this should look like and how it should operate. Our hope for the future, once we've realized everything that we've planned, is that users and providers of sensitive data have a national platform for collaboration and secure access. We're supporting researchers across the data lifecycle from sort of before you even go to apply for ethics, you've got resources to data space for your research. We're promoting and facilitating reuse and collaboration. We're really focused on discovery because a lot of times sensitive data aren't particularly discoverable. And we're managing and centralizing the deposits of the data so that that's also taken off the researchers' hands in terms of the data management planning and implementation of that. And that we're also sort of coordinating and streamlining negotiations for new secondary use data sets. So if you're looking at trying to negotiate with a partner, or maybe it's a charity or a government for some data that they have us as a trusted partner to know sort of a track record and an infrastructure, a well-supported infrastructure that they can feel confident putting their data in, and that you can feel confident working in. But we're going to need help to do all that. And, we've got today and we've got, a lot of future opportunities for engagement coming. We're going to be creating working groups and community fora to get more feedback. And we will be conducting some training to help you learn more about sensitive data management. And we'd love to see you and hear your questions. And with that, it's Q&A time. So as I mentioned before, you can use the Q&A box in Zoom to send us a question. That's the best way. I see Natalie's already answered one about where the data that we currently host in the RDCs can be found. Are there any other questions about, sort of CRDCN or the SCAN project?
And I see that there's one hand that is raised.
Okay. Saeed, would you mind putting your question in the chat? We don't actually have the capacity to enable opening mics, I don't think. At least I don't.
I'm able to unmute, I believe.
Oh, okay. Okay, we've got a couple questions coming in the Q&A. So Saeed, maybe I can call on you a bit later. Nadine Bedetz from Justice Canada asks, will the CRDCN be creating linkages between the various data sets? And if so, will they be preparing linkage weights and other supports for users? So this is something that we are certainly don't want to rule out, but I think it is probably going to be on a data set by data set basis, right? So, we're going to have different parts of the risk framework, right? So there might be some data where it's suitable to link. There might be some data where it's not suitable to link. We would like to have, the ability to link things, assuming those were permissible. But ultimately, whoever's putting the data into the service is going to be the one that is able to decide, if these things are possible and when they're possible. We'd certainly like to be able to have that capacity, and we do plan on engaging with Statistics Canada, particularly to look at some of those possibilities. Linkage weights, again, is going to be very data set dependent. What the linkage weight is very much depends on the sampling frame and the sampling design, and whether it's possible to kind of even create weights to sort of express something as a nationally representative way is very much dependent on the data set. So I hope that answers your question. Ingrid Spletsdoser asks, have you considered OCAP standards, governance of Indigenous data? Yes, that is very central to our proposal. We've all taken the OCAP course. We're very interested in being able to provide a place where, Indigenous communities could feel comfortable putting their data. That is still going to be very much a negotiation between, us and the communities, because of course it is their data. There was something that I was going to say, something else I was going to say on that. Oh, yes. And we also don't intend to step on any of the FNIGC's, projects related to their sort of own data curation system that they're sort of working on. So we do routinely meet with them, and have very open dialogue with the FNIGC group. And we'll be looking to bring this project into that relationship too, and continue to engage with them on data governance. Okay, Amber says a lot of institutions are already engaged around this topic in the FERDER, Borealis, and Alliance communities. How do you see these CRDCN-led initiatives connecting? Yes, thank you, Amber, and hi. We're fairly well connected and aware of the other sort of national services that are available, and have a pretty good sense of what they're doing. Definitely, we do plan to leverage national supports in our project. So I think you can look forward to hearing from me at Borealis about how we can work together to enhance discoverability and metadata contents of the data that are in the SCAN data space. So yes, we will definitely be engaging with other national supports in the ecosystem in providing these services and try not to duplicate efforts. Okay. Amin asks, is there overlap with Statistics Canada's longitudinal administrative database? So the LAD is a 20% sample of tax filers over time. And that is just sort of one data set in the CRDCN arsenal of those sort of over 300 Statistics Canada data sets that we currently make available. I don't know if this question is related to plans to link to it. As I said in response to the previous questioner, we wouldn't want to rule that out by design. But that's very much Statistics Canada's database, and there'd be a lot of negotiations, privacy impact assessments. It would be a process to link anything to the LAD. Although Statistics Canada does have a bunch of things that are linked to the T1 family file, which is sort of the full collection of tax filers. And more information about that can be found on our website at that link that Natalie had posted in the answers question. Okay, Ingrid says, I'm assuming then there will be different standards of anonymization for different classes of data. Yes, I don't want to make any assumptions. Certainly, we're not likely to be looking at providing identified data. The idea of this is that we're looking at sensitive data. A lot of it we do expect will not be fully anonymizable, if that's a word. So we can de-identify it, right? We can take the names and the addresses off of it. But with data that are quite detailed or which contain sort of fairly comprehensive qualitative responses, you can never really anonymize it. And that's the kind of sort of the data sets that we're envisioning hosting is the ones where, if to anonymize it is to render it sort of useless. And so we want that sort of backstop with an eye to sensitivity and the 5 safes to ensure that the data can be safely reused. And that's the kind of things that we're looking at. Is the main difference from this new proposed network and the existing RDC network the source of the sensitive data sets? Will they mostly be from university research projects? Thank you, Laura. That is the main difference. So the RDC program is the exclusive domain of Statistics Canada data sets. The SCAN data space will be for, sort of other data sets. They might be from university projects. We could be looking at, charities who want to deposit their program data. We could be looking at university researchers or other researchers who want to negotiate with some other organization. Maybe it's a business, maybe it's something else for access to secondary use data, and the SCAN data space be the place where that, as the trusted third party, where that access and evaluation of the data can happen. The RDC program is going to continue to be sort of exclusively for StatsCan data. So thank you for your question. David, what would be the sustainability strategy for the project infrastructure in the long term? Well, I wish we knew that. That is part of the project. It looks like Natalie wants to take that one.
I thought you were just going to send it to me directly. That's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Our plan, well, there's different ways to answer this question, David, because what we're trying to figure out here is, what's the community? What are the needs? What are the standards and the technical architecture? But also, what's the business model or the sustainability strategy around this kind of thing? One of the things that I think I can say as a kind of maybe comfort around the idea of longer term sustainability is that we are one of CFI's major science initiatives, and we've been funded under that program a number of times now, and have been in existence for 26 years. So the plan would be to incorporate this work into the larger structure of CRDCN as an MSI, and that would be part of the way that we would manage it. But there will be need for additional resources, so we will look into what are the options that make the most sense. Hope that answers that.
Okay. Thank you. So Ingrid, what is social sciences data, i.e., what disciplines would it include psychosocial health data? I think we do see that as part of our sort of domain. Currently, the RDC program is, we sort of flag it as social science and population health data. So, less clinical trials, more sort of epidemiological study material that would look at sort of the population health component. But that said, we're not, looking to exclude anyone at this point. We'd love to hear, from the community. And if you think you might see yourself as part of the social sciences community, then we'd love to talk to you. And maybe you are, and you just don't feel like it yet, or you don't know it. So I think, don't write yourself off if you've got, if data that's health. We're not as strict as CIHR on what counts as health and what doesn't. Okay, Andrea, can you share insight on how new administrative data sets overseen by government bodies are added to the CRDCN? Who is this typically initiated by, and is there sometimes resistance? What is the process like? Okay, so thinking of the CRDCN as it exists now, these are all data sets that have to be Statistics Canada data sets. And so, how are these data sets added to the Statistics Canada repositories? That is a mixed bag. Sometimes the Statistics Canada subject matter groups are the ones going out after the data. Sometimes it's the provincial departments that are interested in being able to combine their data with StatsCan data and do analyses on those linked data sets. And so it does sort of, it's a mixed bag. It depends on what the data is and who's asking. So it's not, I don't know that there's a typical initiated by. Resistance, I don't know that there's necessarily resistance. There is a fairly comprehensive privacy impact assessment process that goes through creating any linkages. So I would hesitate to call that resistance because it is quite important. But there can sometimes be, process questions and privacy questions that might preclude a certain data set being linked to another one. There's also cost considerations because all these things are done on cost recovery on Statistics Canada's basis. So I hope that answers the question. If you have any further questions about that, you can feel free to shoot me an email. My email's on the screen as we speak. By doing so, one can work and submit code for the analysis anywhere in Canada. I'm not sure what the model exactly is going to look like. So the RDC model is that you come in and you work directly on the data. There are international models. For example, in Germany, you could submit code against a database. There's a staff scientist at the department that runs it against the raw data and submits back to you the output of the file, assuming that it passes the vetting constraints for the data set. So that's certainly something that we can explore over the next couple of years with the data space as that as a potential service offering or a service method. So yeah, definitely not ruling that out. But our primary experience is in researchers working directly with the data, and I think that'll be on the table too. Could your group create and deliver individualized training or support on governance, storage, and/or utilization of sensitive data to individual research groups? My group includes governmental, nonprofit organizations, and university researchers that are trying to establish common data collection, data analysis, and data sharing in a particular sector. I think I would love to hear more about your use case. So if you could send me an email at the email on the screen, I would love to hear your needs because I think you are probably not the only person with those needs. And we'd love to have some training that can speak not only to you, but to other similar research collaborations that share some features with your situation. So if you would please send an email directly to me about that question. Thank you so much. Michelle has a few questions. How do you envision people accessing the data? Will there be server access? Will it be like currently working on an Alliance cloud? Okay, I've never worked on an Alliance cloud. There, again, there's a possible menu option of accessing the data directly. We are looking to sort of probably have it's going to be more secure, I think, than the Alliance clouds that I've seen. Like you will not have full access to sort of change permissions within the system and open and close ports and do things like that. That would really put a damper on our ability to guarantee the confidentiality of the other data in the data space. So I don't think you'll have you won't have direct access to the metal. I can say that with a fair degree of confidence. But there will be an environment if there's an environment for direct access to data, it will be one where you're able to work directly with the data, if that's the question. Could you provide some examples of data that you'd be incorporating? Will you be bringing in the data that CRDC has already to create easier access here? Okay, so this goes back a little bit to Laura's question. There still is going to be a separation in between the Statistics Canada data and the SCAN data. So they're not likely to coexist, although we do, as I said, want to talk to StatCan about the possibility of making them interoperable in some way. We have no idea what that looks like. And as I said before, those are Statistics Canada's data sets. And they have to come to the table and be in agreement with whatever is proposed and whatever is going to make sense for them too. One thing I would love to see, even for basic StatsCan data, is a setup similar to IPUMS in the US for access. Will you be considering something like this? Yes, I think we will be considering something like that. Again, we're going to be looking at a suite of offerings and what makes sense for us to provide and where our niche is in this ecosystem. So I think that will be something that we consider. I know that we've got some strong support for having one level of service be simply an authorized download of the data set where there is trust for the researcher to sort of have a copy of the data and to manage it under the sort of terms of an agreement that's been sort of brokered and curated. So I think we can say that we're not going to leave a lot of stones unturned as far as looking at different potential models. Thank you for your questions. Leanne, how do you envision the relationship between this data space and Statistics Canada and the RDC facilities themselves? Would this data space be fully remote? Would it rely on any support from staff at the RDCs, who I believe are StatCan employees? Correct. That is correct. They are StatCan employees. We are not looking at setting up a bunch of in-person trusted research environments. I see the reaffirming head shake there. So we are thinking that this data space would be fully remote. The relationship between the space and Statistics Canada and the RDC facilities, again, is going to be part of what we're talking about over these 2 years. And we're going to be talking to Statistics Canada about what is possible, what is impossible, and what we can envision in the future, and what kind of things we can look towards doing together to sort of bring some of these data sets together and make them interoperable. Okay, there are so many components to this. Agreed. For high value collections, such as the census, from a national data steward perspective, we need more coordination, for Statistics Canada, research community, libraries, archives could benefit from thinking about census data releases on a scheduled basis to streamline access after 99 years. Okay, thank you for the comment. It continues. Also for linkages, we can do a better job for CRDCN collections, master files, pumps, and the research derivatives. Is this also in scope? We see a lot of StatsCan data now being deposited in Borealis. Okay. Thank you, Amber. I think we will hear from each other, and we definitely plan to engage with Borealis and Scholars Portal as part of this project. Ruben Ford from SRDC, will you be developing a new application process? Who might be permitted to access the datasets? So this is part of the sort of business model question that we need to answer as part of this project. I can think that, based on what we see in the rest of the world, their eligibility to access a dataset can depend on who you are. So in some cases, for-profit use is forbidden. I know that SRDC is itself a not-for-profit, so that wouldn't necessarily apply to you, but I'm just speaking generally. There can be some that are only for research purposes. There can be lots of different sort of licensing conditions that are put on datasets. We're not looking to exclude anybody from the data space. And I think, seeing you here reminds me how important it is that we engage with the not-for-profit sector, yourselves and other similar organizations around how you could see yourselves in this space too. So thank you for your question. What types of infrastructure/training are you looking to develop initially? Any low-hanging fruit you're hoping to start with? Well, I think the low-hanging fruit for us to start with is probably around training. As I mentioned, this funding envelope does not include any infrastructure dollars. So we are going to be looking towards applying for some infrastructure money to actually build the thing once we have scoped out what it should look like. I think the priority in the first couple of years is going to be trying to figure out what kind of metadata standards and what kind of things we're hoping the research community will partner with us on and buy into in terms of collecting data so that it can eventually be part of the data space. So I think that would be the lowest hanging fruit, would be to kind of get people thinking now about what that sort of deposit and sharing looks like once we've actually built the thing. Lisa Garland Baird says, my research group, federal government, would also be interested in the above. I'm not sure what the above is, but I would love to hear from you in my inbox also. Thank you so much. Okay. Danica, we're seeing some nuanced consent for sharing and access beyond just the researcher giving permission in support of ongoing consent. What are you starting to think about in terms of data access committees and access terms? Thank you, Danica. I think what we're sort of again seeing is broad consent for reuse of data, and this is something that we are going to be talking to research ethics boards about. Where their comfort levels are. We're going to be talking to the researchers about what sort of participants are comfortable with, and what we can do to sort of encourage sharing of data beyond the initial project. Data access committees, access terms, I think it's a little too early for us to speak on that. But certainly we would like to see, sort of the consent obviously respected. But we would like to start to sort of see researchers thinking about deposit and sharing during the consent process. And sort of making that sharing a lot easier for us down the line. So again, support for the full data lifecycle, which is sort of begins before the project is ever really ever launched into the wild. Neha Patel says, thank you, Natalie, for your clarifications. Will there be clear criteria or tiers of sensitivity to determine how different data sets, such as researcher collected participant data, versus administrative data are accessed and managed? Thank you, Neha. Again, I do think I see us as having more than one tier of service, and I do think that we need to figure out whether it's going to be where the risk matrix lives, and how it works, right? So there's going to be some things where the researcher might be comfortable sharing it at one level, but we're not, just because of how sensitive the information is. So we really need to do a good dive on that sort of, matrix and how to manage these things. And Natalie's got her hand up. Go ahead, Natalie.
I just want to add to Nia and everybody, these are really fantastic questions.
They are.
That we don't have answers to yet, because that's what this pilot is about. So when you have these kinds of questions and you have a sense of how they may be answered or approached from the work that you do, we're really interested in hearing from you. So maybe you can join the community forum that we're going to set up, that kind of thing, because this is what we need to work through. This is why I think the funding for this data space is important, because there are nuanced decisions to make around sensitive data, and we know it's not a one size fits all solution. So trying to understand how it can be a certain select number of sizes and not too many, but not one size fit all, is I think part of the challenge here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so these have been really, really excellent questions. You're asking all the right things, and we love to see it. So, but it actually also is up to you to help us answer them too, unfortunately. So please join with our engagement as you see them coming. We will have a website that we'll be sending. It's not built yet. We're just getting started. But we'll be sending it to everyone who joined the webinar, where you can learn a little bit more and find out how better to get in contact with us. And we're going to be doing events across, at different places, and you can come meet us. We're really looking forward to this project and getting to talk with all the potential users and data depositors. Okay, I managed to out active question myself, so whew, I could have slowed down a little bit, I guess, but they just kept coming, and I didn't know how many there were going to be, and I wanted to get to as many as I could. So, is there anybody else who has any questions about the SCAN data space project? I thank you all for your applause. And yeah, we look forward to engaging with you. Thanks so much for coming today, and we'll see each other soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.